start it, or do,
Yeah, we'll just, let's start with,
because I'll introduce myself
yeah, you can
Okay.
introduce yourself,
and my family.
your family,
Mhm.
and, I guess, also talk about you being more of a tribal historian,
Oh, okay.
okay?
See, I never think me. I gotta think me today. I usually it's you. I'm doing the interviewing. I wanna hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so tell me your name.
I'm Risa Supernaw Proctor.
Can you spell that for me?
The first name,
Supernaw Proctor. Just
Supernaw, Proctor, Proctor.
and tell me about what you do for tribal members.
Well, Grandma Supernaw just had oral history, and she always kept it going. She knew all the families and kept the information going, and then she passed it on to my dad, Bill Supernaw Jr., and then he passed it on to me. So I ended up with 53 years of working with genealogy and history of the O-Gah-Pah tribe. I have a lot of information, and I'm trying to now share it with the tribe and put it in the library and distribute it to the families and what have you, keep it going again.
Yeah. Can you,
Oh, I do want to
yeah, go ahead.
talk about, so Bill Supernaw Jr. was my father, and my grandmother was Mary Maud Angel, Tall Chief, and and then her father was Tall Chief Kahika Steda, or Louis Angel, last hereditary chief of the O-Gah-Pahs, and his father was Lame Chief Kahika Steda, and that's passing along chief, and his father was Wapatisa, and that's Black Robe, and then his father was Kahika Thumpate, and that's 2 chiefs. That's 6, and Grandma Supernaw would recite 12 when she was alive, back as far back as 12. But I'd have to look those up. I didn't memorize those, but the reason I did those other 2 is because Kahika Thumpate, he received the Spanish medal, and then Wapatisa received the Jefferson medal. Do you want me to talk a little bit about the medal? I've got a replica. This is not the real thing. This is a replica that I got at the Mint in Washington, D.C. But the first one we have is the Spanish medal, and but the one that my portion of the family have is the Thomas Jefferson, 1801. He wasn't the first president. George Washington was the first president, but that wasn't the Mint at that time. That wasn't the U.S. It was, prior to that. So there were no George Washington medals from the Mint, the U.S. Mint. Other traders had a George Washington medal, but they were different shaped, oblong, and different sizes, and they gave those away. But the Mint started with Thomas Jefferson, and on his they had 3 different sizes: 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, and Tall Chief the head chief got the bigger one. That's a 4-inch, and only on the Jefferson medal, that big one, was 2 sheets of silver, thin silver, and a band around it, and that's the first one they made. After that, it was solid silver and smaller, the other presidents. Anyway, so that's oh, and then the George Washington medal, they did come back. The U.S. Mint came back later, about 1900, and they did give that to Tall Chief at that time. And there's a picture of Tall Chief that everybody's seen with the proclamation and that's when they gave that to George Washington Medal to him. So he had 3 medals.
Do you know what happened to those medals?
Yeah, we have them all.
The family has them all?
We have them all. George Washington Medal and Jefferson and the Spanish Medal.
Do you have them? Or does...
What we have,
the replicas?
Billy and I have, no, we have the real.
You have
the real one. The real Thomas Jefferson first medal. The Spanish medal, and I don't know if they want me to say their names, but my nephew has the Spanish and my cousin has the George Washington.
That's amazing though.
Yeah, yeah, to think that we've kept that in our family since 1763. Well, we had Tall Chief on his land across from the complex. He had, I think the name was Spring River Mine, Spring River, I believe. He had that, and then my grandmother had several, and I have all those documents that she kept, back to 1900. That we've kept different documents, Osage and O-Gah-Pah, land and bank accounts and royalty checks and, which I have stored. And she was, her first husband was Willie Thompson. But she had, she was, what do they call that? Anyway, that's what she had, but her daughter died first. So it should have all come back to her. But
I know what you're talking about now, I just can't think of the term, but
I know it is on, well, anyway. So I had papers to show all that she had mines and other allotments, and of course she had the head right and land in Skytube too. But no, hers was, he died early. He died in around 1900, and then she married Supernaw in 1906-07. Yeah.
Can you tell me, and this might seem like, just the general knowledge that we've gone over before to you, but can you tell me about what you know about the O-Gah-Pah's introduction to the white man?
Well, we have a website, and that's on the website. Grandma telling it in her own words. But of course, the story I think I told you was, and I think I can tell this, but she said to us, and we have her on tape, with Jenny, white people don't like me. And she said, but that's okay, because I don't like them either. So we were raised, that's the way she felt.
Did she ever talk to you about experiencing racism? Like you said, white people didn't like her and she didn't like white people. But was it because of experiences that she had with?
It was because of experiences she'd had, yes. Now, Dad, he worked in Montana when 1960, and I went up there, and they would have signs out front, no service to Indians, and even in Clinton, Oklahoma, when he worked there in 59, 58, they would have signs, no service to Indians. And then my cousin, Peggy, who was almost full-blood, she went out there and tried to get a job, and they just told her, we don't hire Indians, The only incident I ever had, because I'm not that dark, but we all went to Indiana to watch my nephew play football, and we stopped in a restaurant, and there were 10 of us, and we were all Indian, and we sat there and sat there and sat there and sat there, and they didn't wait on us, but we were having a good time talking. Then we realized when we looked around, they were waiting on everybody but us. and they refused to serve us, so we left at that time.
So when you saw those signs as a young kid, though, did anything occur to you? Were you thinking about anything that was, did it even occur to you, I guess, that was like discrimination that they were?
Well, it's degrading, and it's just, I always thought man's way that they treat man, I mean, it's just not right, and it's not unfair, and it's, but that's the way it was. At that time, I had an uncle that, and his guardian was the dentist there, and the dentist told me that he had paid him that day his check, his money, his royalties, paid my uncle, and so he knew he had a lot of money. Well, the next morning they found him dead on the railroad tracks in Sperry, Oklahoma, and so he said, I know he had money, but he didn't the next morning, and they found that he'd been in a card game, but they didn't pursue it or check it out. That would have been in probably 1930s, something like that. Yeah, so, and another thing is, one of my aunts, Pauline, was married to an Indian. No, he was married to a non-Indian, and at that time, because they all drove Quapaws, I say, Pierce Arrows, like a Rolls Royce, and so they had a Pierce Arrow, and that guy took it and left and drove it, but anyway, he had an accident, and the people he hit tried to come back on Grandpa Supernaw and Grandma because it was their car. At that time, it went all the way to some, I don't know what stage court, but it went trying to get, but they were denied. The people were denied because Grandpa and Grandma didn't have anything to do with it. He took the car and they didn't know he was going to. But you mean things like that?
Yeah, well, and I just want to say too, like, if there's ever anything that you don't feel, like you don't want to talk about, I don't want you to feel like you have to talk about something. I just want to say that the reason that I'm searching for this information, a lot of our relatives went to these boarding schools, and that was tied to the mines. Like, people don't think about that, but that was tied to the mines. They got rid of the children, and then these Indian agents would literally lease their lands, and they would collect royalties off of that land.
Oh yeah, we dealt with that on the Osage side because they marked up everything in price if you're Osage or Quapaw as to a non-Indian. They'd go in and want to buy something, jewelry or whatever, and and then you'd go in as an Indian and they would mark it up. But that's just here. Now down south, they were just treated very poorly. They just didn't wait on them till everybody was out of the building. Kenneth Ankew was my uncle, married to my aunt, and he always talked about how they would have to stand in the back of the building until everybody left, and then they were waited on. They were really abused, I understand. The reason we weren't as much as other tribes, I think, is because we had the money, Osage and Quapaws at that time. It all, jealousy and greed, it all stems from that. They want what you have. Well, I was going to talk about, I think I did last time we talked, about coming from Arkansas. And there was 3 chiefs, and there was Lewis, Quapaw, Joe Lane, John Berry's folks, and Kahika Teda, my folk. And they came across, and Lewis Quapaw and his group, which that's where the Griffin came from, Victor and they're all Quapaws, but they stayed down there by Canadian River. And then Kahikateta, then Joe Lane, I think, died in that process. So they grouped together and went with Kahikateta. That's when they went up to the Neosho River right above today, the border of Kansas. And the reason I'm telling this is because I want Sky to put in there. So then, that was about 1838 when they started this way, right? 1838?
1833 was the
33.
third treaty.
Yeah. And then they went on up in there. They didn't hit the reservation exactly. And the Osages were all around them, so we were with Osages then. But, and then in that middle of that, the Civil War was, and that's when they pushed us back up to Ottawa, Kansas, and that town starts with a P. And they were there for about a year and a half, I think. And then they came back down, and the Osages said, you can come stay with us. We'll take care of you. And there was, 30 people probably that stayed around Quapaw, which was all John Barry's people. Lanes, Mary Lane. There was 4 Mary Lanes. Anyway, so then we went in 1872. We went with the Osages and we stayed there at Skytook till the government made them go back to get their land at Quapaw, and that was in they were fully back by 1890. So Tall Chief lived up there and died here in 1918. That's when that flu was going around, and a lot of them got that flu. He had a grandson that died, and he died. And Grandma had 2 kids that died. But that's kind of so then they all went back up that way. But not everybody knows that we were in Skytook, Quapaws, for 16 years. But it's all on the rolls. They took rolls, and the names are on there.